The truth doesn't shout, it waits. That line had been my mantra for 18 months, the quiet shield I held up against the storm my ex-husband, Robert, had unleashed after our divorce. He didn't just leave, he waged a campaign, subtly poisoning the minds of our two children, Leo and Clara, turning their love for me into a confused, painful suspicion. He'd convinced them I was cold, unstable, and wanted to erase him from their lives. I never retaliated, never screamed my defense. I just waited, folding laundry and making dinners, betting everything on the hope that eventually they would see the real fracture in his character. The moment that bet paid off wasn't in a courtroom, but in the mundane, buzzing heat of my apartment laundry room. I was wrestling with a sheet, the kind of domestic monotony that used to be the foundation of our family, when my phone screamed with an unknown number. It was the school principal. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the dryer's hum. "Ms. Davies, we have an incident. A man, Mr. Harrison, is here attempting to remove the children from the premises without your authorization. He's claiming emergency custody. We've called local law enforcement." A chill colder than any January wind swept over me. The sheet slipped from my hands, emergency custody, a phrase that signaled the ultimate escalation. My blood roared in my ears, not with panic but a dreadful confirmation. Robert wasn't just trying to alienate them, he was trying to steal them. I didn't shake. I didn't cry. The fear I had been carrying for over a year had finally settled into a hard, cold resolve. By the time I reached Maplewood Elementary, the parking lot was an eerie tableau. 2 patrol cars flashed silent, insistent warnings against the late afternoon sun. Their lights were a brutal punctuation mark on a scene that should have been only children and backpacks. I pushed through the glass doors and found the scene. The small, sterile principal's office, too small to contain the depth of the drama unfolding within. There were Leo and Clara, seated on a couch beside a uniformed officer. 12-year-old Leo, usually so boisterous, was small and pale, nervously picking at the stitching on his jeans. 8-year-old Clara was openly weeping, her small body convulsing, not with typical frustration, but with a terror that seemed too large for her chest. Then I saw him, Robert, standing by the window, his back to the wall, surrounded by 3 officers. This wasn't the slick, confident man who charmed me, nor the furious one who'd torn our marriage apart. This was a man stripped down to his final, exhausted defense. His face was grey, his expensive suit rumpled. His eyes were wide, darting like a trapped bird's, holding a pathetic cocktail of desperation and disbelief that his own actions had brought this hammer down. I turned to the lead officer. "What is going on?" The officer, a woman with a kind but unflinching expression, spoke clearly. He attempted to leave the grounds with the children, claiming he had received an urgent court order granting him immediate temporary physical custody. When staff requested the paperwork, he became aggressive and unable to produce any documentation. Robert spun around, his voice ragged. "They want to be with me, Amelia. They told me you were planning to cut off all contact, that you were moving states next week without telling them. I had to intervene." I held my breath and turned slowly to my children. Robert's lie was now a tangible thing, exposed under the cold fluorescent lights. Clara launched herself toward me, burying her face in my coat. "Mommy, I'm so sorry. He told us you hated living here and were going to leave us with his sister. He said you wouldn't answer his calls anymore, so he had to sneak us out." Leo, quieter, finally lifted his eyes, and in them I saw the shattering of a complex illusion. He looked not at me but at his father. His voice was a thin thread of confusion and accusation. "He said you were hiding the court papers from him, Dad. He said you were the one who broke the rules." Robert's posture crumpled. The web of small lies he had been weaving for months, the whispers, the loaded questions, the subtle denigration, had suddenly converged into one catastrophic, undeniable fabrication. He looked at his son, then at me, and in his eyes flashed a profound moment of self-recognition. The absolute, irreversible damage he had done to his own image. The officers separated us. They took the children for a brief, supervised interview, and then they took Robert into formal custody for attempted custodial interference. There were no handcuffs, no dramatic struggle, just a quiet, horrifying acknowledgement of defeat. As the officer read him his rights, Robert looked at me one last time. There was no bitterness left, only a deep, bottomless emptiness. The truth had finally found its opening, not through my words, but through his most desperate, indefensible action. Later, walking out to the car, the blue and red lights still flashing faintly in the distance, Leo slipped his small, slightly damp hand into mine. He didn't say anything, but the slight, firm pressure was an apology, a bridge rebuilt, a silent understanding passing between us. He didn't need me to explain anymore. He had seen the truth with his own eyes. That night, after the children were finally quiet in their beds, I sat in the darkness of the living room, surrounded by the remnants of my weary life. The weight of the last 18 months, the silent endurance, the loneliness, felt like it was finally lifting. I hadn't fought for them. I had simply stood still, allowing the force of his own negativity to eventually consume him. The next day, the children began working with a counsellor. I made the call, not with dread, but with a sense of necessary progress. It was the first time I fully admitted that I couldn't rebuild our foundation alone. Looking out the window at the morning light, a light that felt cleaner, less clouded by secrecy, I realized the silent miracle that had transpired. I had lost a husband and endured 18 months of torment, but in the end, I found something far more valuable. A clear path forward and the undeniable, unshakable trust of my children. I hadn't needed to shout my truth. I just needed to let his own silence and his own actions do the talking. I took a deep breath, and for the first time in a long time, the air felt entirely mine.